All right. Boys, welcome back to the Strengthened Hands Podcast, episode 3. I am excited to be talking with you again today. I feel like I say that every time, but it's always true, so I'm just going to keep saying it. So today's topic, we are talking about work ethic, what that is, what it looks like, and why you need it. It's kind of funny. It's a Saturday morning when I'm recording this, and all day Emily has been doing this thing where she'll hold 2 pieces of paper up with something written on it. I don't know what's written, she does. And she'll tell me to pick one, and whatever I pick, we do. So on one piece of paper she had written pancakes, and one she had written omelets. And so I picked omelets, and so we had omelets for breakfast. And then there was another one. One was comfy clothes or dressed up, and so I dressed up a little bit today because that's what I picked. And then right before I went to record this podcast, she held up another 2 pieces, and I didn't know what they were. So I picked one, and it said, clean the bathroom. And the other one said, record the podcast. And so I was like, oh, man. But then I was laughing because today we're talking about work ethic. And so I just thought it was funny that I had to work before I could do my podcast on work ethic. Anyway, I just thought it was funny. But first we have to do the question of the day, of course. So the question of the day is this: what is your biggest fear? Perhaps you just realized that your biggest fear is awkward silence. I know that used to be one of mine, actually. I hated awkward silence, and conversation used to be really scary for me. Now, not so much. But my biggest fear is the thought that I'm wasting time. I value my life so much that I never want to waste even a second of time. So when there are things that I'm just starting out, like I'm starting a new project, like when I started this podcast, or if I'm doing a task that I feel like should take a certain amount of time but it takes longer, I hate that. I hate how long it takes to get through because I'm just like, oh, this is taking so long. It shouldn't have to take this long. And I feel like I'm wasting my life and that it's not worth very much at that point. Because life is short. Life is really short. And the older you get, the more you realize that. And Psalm 90 verse 12 says, teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. So we're supposed to think about how short life is and the brevity of life. So one way that you can combat that, though, that fear, is to really make sure that you're working hard at everything you do. And we're going to talk about that when we talk about work ethic. So it's kind of a nice transition. But I want you guys to tell me what your biggest fears are, because I always find that interesting. So, work ethic. Work ethic. What is it? What is work ethic? I want to say right up front that work ethic is not the ability to work hard at something. And when I say this, I'm thinking of people like at the gym, okay? So if you consider the biggest, buffest guy in your gym, if you are into working out, you know these guys. They're in the gym and they're huge and they're just strutting around like peacocks and putting massive amounts of weight on the bar and repping out and grunting and sweating. They're like The Rock, you know? Just because they're grunting and sweating and working out and doing 10 times the weight that you are, that does not mean that they have good work ethic, because work ethic is not the ability to work hard. And the reason that is because that's probably something that they really enjoy, is working out. And you can work hard at anything if you enjoy it, right? That's what they say, is that when you find the job that you love to do, you don't feel like you're working. You don't work a day in your life. So what is work ethic then? What is that? The basic idea behind it is it's the ability to work hard when you don't want to. Okay, and we're going to look at that in a second. But first, I want to go back, way back, to the biblical foundation of work and work ethic, because that's what this podcast is all about. We're we're uncovering the foundations of what it takes to be a godly man. And godly men should have great work ethic, but to understand work ethic, we have to go back to when work was created. So, work was God's idea. This was something that was part of creation. When God created man in Genesis chapter 2, he gives them work. So to Adam, he says, you are in charge of all the beasts of the field, all the animals. You're to name them, and you're to have dominion over them. And you are also to till the field. You're supposed to be a farmer. You're supposed to produce crops and grow food for yourself. And so that was Adam's job. God gave him a specific set of duties that he was to perform. And it was supposed to give him a sense of fulfillment and pride in a way, not sinful pride, but a pride of just like, yeah, I'm really doing something that's helpful. I'm doing what I'm created to do. And then when God created woman, of course, he said you are to be the child bearer and you're supposed to carry the children, and you're supposed to be a helpmate to Adam. And so work was instated before the fall, before sin entered the world. So work is a good thing. Most people think that work is, I don't know, there's a lot of people who just hate their job. And that's really sad, because that's not the way it's supposed to be. It wasn't until the fall that work became corrupt. You know, the world was perfect before the fall. And then everything became corrupt. So when Adam and Eve ate the apple, or the fruit, to Adam, God said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree, cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread. And to the woman he said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you will bring forth your children. Your desire will be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. So God creates this perfect work for these two individuals to do, rearing children, producing crops, and then God curses that work when they sin, when they fall. And that's when work becomes a chore. That's when work becomes hard. It wasn't hard before that. It was actually fulfilling, and it was good. And some people attain that in this life. Some people have jobs that they truly love, and some people don't. But this is where work ethic is actually found. This is the first time that this even becomes a consideration, because of what I said earlier. Work ethic is the ability to work hard at something that you don't want to do. Work ethic is a big deal. It's a really big deal. And the first murder in Scripture, in history, was actually caused by a combination of two people's work ethic. One was good, one was bad, and the jealousy that happened because of what happened in that story. So in Genesis 4, we're given the story of Cain and Abel, and they both brought sacrifices to the Lord. Abel was the younger brother, and he was a shepherd. He gave his best lamb to the Lord as a sacrifice. And then Cain, the older brother, brought a sacrifice of food, of produce. And God accepted the sacrifice of Abel, but he did not accept the sacrifice of Cain. And it tells us a little bit of why. It says that God was not impressed by Cain's efforts. He said, why are you angry? This is God to Cain. Why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at your door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. So Cain did not have a good work ethic. He brought his second best to God, whereas Abel brought his very best lamb. And so that caused God to look on Abel with favor, and he looked on Cain. He was kind of displeased with him, and this caused Cain to actually murder his younger brother because he was jealous of God's favor. But it was all tied to work ethic. He was the one who didn't bring his best offering. So it's really important to know that not only is work ethic, it's not just a good virtue to have, if you want to be successful in life. It's not just something that you need to grow in if you want to mature, it's actually sinful to not have good work ethic because it causes jealousies and other sinful things. It says sin is crouching at your door if you do not do well. Okay? So we're going to look into the different parts of work ethic. And I'm going to use some analogy and I'm going to use some personal examples from my life to kind of break into this. So I said that work ethic is not the ability to work hard, right? I know some really hard workers. I told you guys at the beginning of this podcast, episode 1, that this podcast is for the boys that I used to coach when I was a gymnastics coach. And when I was a coach, I worked with some of the hardest working kids that I've ever seen in my life. These kids were just amazing. So when I was a gymnastics coach, I could see the different elements of work ethic firsthand all the time because I had a group of kids who were really hardworking. As a whole, they were really hardworking, but there were some times when I would see, oh, this kid doesn't really have quite as good of a work ethic as the others. And it would come out in different ways. So I want to break into those certain ways to ask you the question, do you have a good work ethic? Because you might think you have a good work ethic. You may never have really thought about it, but I really want to challenge you to be introspective and to be humble and honest with yourself and say, okay, maybe I don't have as good a work ethic as I thought. I would consider myself to have a pretty good work ethic, or I did before I really started making this podcast, making the notes for it. And I realized that there are parts of me that I could work on. I have worked, I think 4 different jobs, and pretty much every job that I've had, whether it was a gymnastics coach or I worked on a riverboat or as a cleaner like I am now, my bosses would compliment me and they would tell me good things about my work ethic. They'd say things like, oh, you're the help that's so hard to find nowadays, or I wish I could clone you. I wish there were 2 of you. But as nice as that is to hear, I think that is a demonstration of a general lack of work ethic in the world today, because there are times for me when I'm cleaning a toilet or I'm sweeping behind a couch or something, and I'll see like a dust bunny that I know I should probably get, but nobody's gonna see it if they're not looking for it, and so I just leave it. And that's not good. That's not good work ethic. And so I need to work on that myself, because otherwise sin is crouching at my door. So let's look. I'm going to stop talking about that for a second. I want to look specifically at the characteristics of good work ethic. So let's, for example, say you're in the gym and you're watching people work out. You've got these guys who are sweaty. You got these guys who are huge and jacked, and they're just grunting all over the place, and they're just putting heavy amounts of weight on the bar. Do they have good work ethic? You might assume that they do. However, I want to show you how they might not. Let's say one guy has a shoulder injury. He's huge, but he's got a shoulder injury. And his physical therapist has sternly warned him that he's not supposed to do anything over his head, and especially with no heavy weights with his shoulder injury. He's only supposed to do rehab exercises with light weights. So he's been given something to do, right? He's been given these light exercises that he's supposed to do, but he wants to show off. He wants to prove that he's still the big guy in the gym. And so he goes and loads up a big bar and he starts doing overhead presses. That's not good work ethic, because he is not doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's doing it out of pride. So what would prove him to have good work ethic is if he took the same amount of energy that he puts into doing overhead presses into doing his shoulder raises, his light 10, 15-pound shoulder raises, because he's doing what he's supposed to be doing and he's working hard at it. let's go a little further. Let's say he does decide, okay, I do need to do it. I'm not going to load up the bar. I'm not going to do overhead presses. But when he's doing his shoulder raises, let's say he's supposed to do 4 sets. He gets through the first one and he's like, okay, yeah, good, I'm doing it. Then he gets to the second one, he's like, ugh, I just want to move on to the next exercise. And then the third one, he's like, I'm not doing that 4th set. That's just, I'm done. I'm good. That's not good work ethic either, because he's not going after it with the same amount of energy that he would go after his overhead presses, right? One more step in that analogy, let's say he decides, okay, my PT says that I have to stay away from overhead presses, I have to do my shoulder raises, I have to do 4 sets. So he does those 4 sets, but he is just complaining off the hook. He is complaining to his partner, his workout partner. He's complaining to his wife when he gets home, like, ugh, I had to spend so much time doing these shoulder raises. They're so annoying. Or just things like that. When you complain, that shows that you don't have good work ethic. So how do you know if you have good work ethic? Answer this question for me. Are you able to work hard at the thing that you hate without letting one word of complaint slip out of your mouth? That is how you know if you have good work ethic. I don't know that I can even say that. I can't even say that I don't complain when I'm doing my very non-glamorous job as a house cleaner, even though I would say that I have good work ethic. I won't complain out loud, but I'll certainly complain in my head. I'll be like, man, I've had such a long day. I do not want to sweep behind this couch. I do not want to grab that last dust bunny. It's not even going to be seen. That's complaining. That's not good work ethic. I want to tell you guys that the world has a problem with young men right now. They think that you are lazy, they think that you are entitled, and they just think that you're foolish and that you don't understand how the world works. And work ethic is one of their biggest weapons. When they see you and they see you just sitting on the couch, watching TV, or playing video games, they think that's all you do. And maybe they're right, and you need to confront that right now in your spirit. And you need to say, okay, do I understand how the world works? Do I understand that I need to have a good work ethic? Because if you don't understand that now, you're going to want to understand it. Because what this Strength Enhanced podcast is all about is taking the modern view of masculinity and flipping it on its head. Because there's this whole thing out right now, toxic masculinity. Men are just all about themselves and they're all prideful and they're all, they think they're all that. But I want you guys to flip the script on them. And I want you to be the hard workers. I want you to be the ones who don't complain, the ones who are doing the work and going the extra mile. There's a story in Scripture that talks about Jesus when he's giving lessons to the people. He says that if a soldier asks you to carry his pack 1 mile, you go with him 2 miles. You don't ask, hey, do you want me to come with you an extra mile? No, you just do it. Okay? Do you see that extra dust bunny behind the couch? You just get it. You don't ask. Do you do 5 extra reps on your physical therapy exercises because it's going to be helpful for you? You don't ask. You just do it. That's the kind of men that you're supposed to be. Do you go and take out the trash without being asked? You don't ask. You do it. Okay? It's very simple. Work ethic is a very simple concept, but it takes initiative, and you guys have got to be men of initiative. I want to tell you a little bit about what God says about work ethic. So one of my favorite verses in all of Scripture is Colossians 3:23, and it says, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working unto the Lord, not unto human masters." That's actually what's on the back of this compass that I'm wearing, and it's a compass because it shows me the way how I'm supposed to live. And I'm supposed to live as though everything I do is as unto the Lord, because work has an eternal impact, and I'm going to get into that in just a second. But when you are able to see your work as something that's unto the Lord, it totally flips what you're doing and why. So if you are asked to, or if you're me and you're a house cleaner, when I go to work and I clean 3 houses a day, I'm not just cleaning so-and-so's house. I'm cleaning God's house. I'm working unto the Lord, not unto human masters. So it's like I'm cleaning God's living room. And I'm able to make that as nice and shiny as I can. I'm polishing the wood furniture and I'm able to get everything off the floor. It's just, that's where my work ethic comes from, is that I'm working unto the Lord. Or if you are doing your homework, you are doing that homework as though you were taking God's test and you want to get an A on God's test. Or if you're interrupted from your homework to take out the trash, your parents ask you to take out the trash while you're doing your homework, you go and do that without complaining. Why? Because you get the honor of taking God's trash out. You get the honor of taking the trash out for God. It's kind of a silly way to think about it, but that's literally what's happening, is that God's not interested in what you're doing. He's interested in the heart of why you're doing it the way you're doing it. And when you work with a smile on your face and you're just joyful about everything you do, even if it's something that inside you really hate, that shows. Because people who don't work unto the Lord, they're just working unto themselves, they're just in the gym pumping that iron just for themselves, they can't have that when they're doing something they don't want to do. They're not able to. They have to complain and they have to feel sorry for themselves. But when you can do that, and maybe you're a barista and you're making coffee, but you actually hate making coffee. You'd rather be building a bookshelf or something, right? If you can do that with a smile on your face, you are going to brighten up the entire place, and you're going to show your coworkers that there's something special about you. Matthew 5:15 and 16 says, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven." So that is what work ethic is all about. It's when you are able to do the thing that you hate for the glory of God, and so that other people can see Him in you. That's what it's all about. There are practical benefits to good work ethic, and I want to get into those now because it's such a good thing to hear. It's such a good thing to hear, and it's gonna help you make the change. If you're realizing that you don't have very good work ethic, this will help you make the change, because there's definite benefits to a good work ethic. So one thing is that it matures you. It matures you because in this life, you're never gonna stop doing things, and you're never gonna stop being asked to do things by other people. So doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how old you are. Maybe you're 10 years old, maybe you're 20 years old. If you're 10, your parents are going to tell you to clean your room. If you're 20, your boss is going to tell you to work with this customer or work with this other coworker. You're going to always be asked to do things. And if you can't do that with a good, happy heart, you're going to be miserable your whole life. And so it's a maturing thing. It shows that you are growing up. And who doesn't want to be mature and grown up? Because that is where that stereotype comes in from the world, where, wow, these guys just, this Gen Z, Generation X, whatever, they're just not hard workers. And nobody wants that. The second thing that happens when you have a great work ethic is that you get rewarded for it. You get seen for it. And we don't do things to be seen for our own glory. I already talked about that. We do it to be seen for God's glory. But when I was 14, I started working out, and I loved doing the bench press. I loved the feeling of getting under the bar, putting 110 on each side and just repping it out, because I was small. And a problem happened, though, because it started pulling my shoulders forward and down. because my chest was getting worked on, but I didn't work my back ever. So one day I went to my doctor and he said, you got to start doing some pull-ups because otherwise your shoulders are going to be rounded forward forever. And I didn't want that, and so I started doing pull-ups, but I hated doing pull-ups. I hated doing it. But I did it, and the more that I did it, the easier they became, of course. But more than that, they actually became fun, and I actually got good at them. And that's what happens when you can work hard at something that you hate doing, is you can become good at it, and you can be rewarded for it. Because soon I was doing 15, 20, 25 reps, and people were starting to know me as like the pull-up guy. And I would be able to go to those challenges where they'd set up a bar and give away prizes, and I could rep out 20, 25. And it felt good to be strong in that way. And so this is true for anything, whether you're working hard at your homework or you're working hard at your job. You're going to get rewarded. Either you're going to get a good grade or you're going to get a raise. And that's so true. I've had that happen so many times where I'm just working. I'm working like I know how to work, and then suddenly my boss will come up to me and be like, hey, I'm giving you a raise because I've noticed that you've been working hard. And I'm like, sweet. That's just how it works. You will get rewarded for that. And something that's crazy is, this is just kind of a side note, is that if you don't have a job and you're young, maybe 16, 17, it's amazing how quickly you can start making money, like real money, like hundreds of dollars a week type of money. If you are just a good employee and you show up on time and you will do the work that you're asked without complaining, it's like so quickly you can climb the ladder, because the world truly is, the competition is not hard. There's not a lot of people out there with good work ethic, which is why I'm talking to you guys about this. I want you guys to be in the minority for this, because I want you to reap the benefits of that. Okay, so we're going to transition a little bit to talking about the eternal impact of our work. So I have to change gears a little bit in this part, because work is not just for our benefit. I already talked about this, right? It's for the ultimate benefit of giving glory back to God. God gave us work as humanity to show how good He is. When we work, He fulfills us. He gives us a sense of worth, and we get the fruits of our labor, whether it be a literal fruit from being a farmer, or you get a child in childbearing. So we get like a double blessing. We feel fulfilled, and we get the benefit of our work. But there is another kind of work that is even more important than those two types of work. And it's the work of knowing God and helping others know God. This is the ultimate work of the believer. So if you're not a believer, you don't know Jesus, you don't read your Bible, you haven't been born again, then I hope that you can glean what you are able from this podcast about work ethic and being a solid worker and all of that. But in the end, if you don't understand this concept of eternal work, then it's not going to do you much good. And I want to talk to you about that. So 1 Corinthians 3:12 through 15 is talking about the eternal impact of our work. It says, "Now if anyone builds upon the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, or straw." So really quickly, the foundation that he's talking about, this is Paul in Corinthians. He's writing to a church. He says, if anyone builds upon the foundation, that foundation is the gospel that Paul was preaching. Okay, and the gospel is that we are sinful human beings. We don't work as hard as we should. We don't appreciate the things that have been given to us. We always want more for ourselves. That's why Adam and Eve took the apple when God told them not to do so. The foundation, or the gospel, is that when we sinned, God had to take the punishment for our sin. So He sent His Son Jesus to die for us. And He took that punishment, and he gave us his righteousness, and we had to accept that as a free gift. All right, that's the foundation that he's talking about. If anyone builds upon the foundation, if they work on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, or straw, each one's work will become manifest, for the day will disclose it, because it will be revealed by fire, and the fire will test what sort of work each one has done. If the work that anyone has built on the foundation survives, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned up, he will suffer loss. So really quickly again, it says, for the day will disclose the work. What is the day? The day is the day that Jesus will come back and judge the earth. So if you do not know that there's a judgment coming for the work that you have done, you need to know that right now. Because Paul is talking about building upon the foundation, he's talking to believers, right? Because only believers will build upon the foundation of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Those are the only people who will do that. And they can choose to do it with gold, silver, jewels, or wood, hay, or straw. Okay? Everyone else who is not a believer, all of that work is burned up. No matter what you try to build it with, whether you have the best work ethic in the world, it's going to be burned up because you're not building upon the proper foundation. So you gotta know that. All right? But if you are a Christian, then you have the choice. Okay, am I going to do this with something that's going to perish on the day? Or am I going to do this with precious jewels and silver and gold? And so this is talking right about the eternal impact. He says, whoever builds upon the foundations, if his work survives, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned up, he will suffer loss. So beyond any work ethic for worldly gain, we are working toward the spreading of the gospel. And if your only interest in work ethic is getting more money, getting that raise, getting an A+ in your chemistry class, or getting praise from your family and your friends, that is building with wood or hay or straw. That will be burned up, because that is not the foundation of the gospel. And the foundation is that God gets the glory. God gets the glory for all our work. And so we need to be working with the idea in our head that this is kingdom work. This is going to be spreading the gospel. So when you're that barista and you don't want to be a barista, but you're there anyway, and you're smiling and you're talking with your coworkers and you're pushing through that barrier of like, man, I just don't want to be here. When you push through that and you are able to talk to people that you wouldn't normally talk to, like your coworkers, and you're able to share your life stories with them, and when you're able to share the gospel with them, that is when you're building with those proper items. When I'm at a job cleaning, I don't like cleaning, guys. I really don't like being a cleaner. I would much rather be a gymnastics coach or anything else, really. Maybe not anything, but many other things. I don't like it. But you know what I get to do is I get to basically infiltrate people's homes, and I get to be a smiling face. If they don't know the Lord, I can be a smiling face in their life, and I can show off that joy that I have, because I know that I'm going to heaven, and I have something inside of me that they need, and I've had the opportunity to share the gospel with some people that I work in their house, and I never would have known these people. They never might have heard the gospel if I weren't there. And so that is the eternal work that I'm doing. It's not about the money that I'm getting from my job. It's about the relationships that I'm building. If you are like my wife and you make shirts, she's got her own business. And actually, if you've watched my previous two podcasts on YouTube, you can actually see the shirts that I'm wearing. They're from her company. But if you are making shirts, it's not about all the sales that you get. It's whether that sale has an eternal impact. So she makes shirts that have Christian messages on them. And her encouragement is for people to take that and use that as a conversation prompt and say, hey, look at my shirt. What do you think of that? And when people do that, that starts conversations about Jesus, and that's where her eternal impact is coming from. So it's never just about the money. It's never just about the praise. Because if you're working for the praise of man, that's the only reward that you get. That's what, I think it's Matthew says. Matthew 6:1-2 says, "Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven." This is that reward that 1 Corinthians 3 is talking about. "Thus, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others." So when you do that little extra thing at your cleaning job, and you clean that extra closet, don't be like, "Hey, look what I did. Do I get a raise now?" That's not what that's about. Truly, I say to you, if you receive that praise, you have received your reward. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that you may give in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. That's the reward that comes on the day when your work passes through the fire and is not burned up. So guys, work ethic is so important. I hope that I wasn't jumping around too much talking about this. I know it's kind of hard to follow sometimes. There's a lot to it. But basically, I want you to see and hear that work ethic is important. If you are not working with a good work ethic, then sin is crouching at your door. If you are working only for money, if you are working only for praise, if you are working only for recognition, then that work that you do is worthless and it will be burned up. If you are working unto God and you're working unto Him, not unto human masters, like my compass here says, then that is the work that will survive. When God comes and He judges and He rewards, He will reward based on your eternal work. I want to give you one last admonition for this podcast. This podcast is about doing. It's not just about hearing. So last week when we talked about quiet time with God, I wanted you guys to get the feeling that this was something that was really important. I know when I listen to podcasts, sometimes I'll be listening to all the things that they're talking about and be like, "Oh yeah, that's a really good idea. I should do that." But then the next podcast will start playing and I'll forget about what was just said. But you know what, guys? I want you to hear these as individual messages, and I want them to stir you to action. James 1:22-25 says, "Be doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man observing his natural face in a mirror. For he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of a man he was. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, is the one who will be blessed in what he does." Guys, I want you to cultivate a good work ethic. It's so valuable in the world today. And I want you to develop the kind of work ethic where you're working unto the Lord, not unto human masters. So this challenge I have for you, this week, after you've listened to this podcast, I want you to try to do 10 things that are extra, that are going to build your work ethic that you would not normally do. Okay? So if you see that the trash needs to be taken out, and usually you'd have to be reminded, and you just go do it without being asked, that's one. If you see your parents complaining about a certain thing that they need done, and normally it wouldn't be your responsibility, and you do it, that's two. If you help your sibling clean up your room when normally you'd just be like, forget them, I'll let them clean up their own room, that's three. All right, I want you to start doing, and it could be even something smaller than that, but it's so important to build up this work ethic, guys. So I hope this has been encouraging. I know it's been a challenge even to me, and so guys, be strengthened this week. Go out and start working on that work ethic and come back and tell me how it went. All right, I love you guys. I will talk to you later. Send me some comments and suggestions for the podcast, and I'll see you later.